the All Star Game, the Midsummer Classic, that meaningless exhibition game in the middle of the season. Whatever name you want to give it, All Star Weekend and the All Star Game itself is always a fun time for Major League Baseball. With the draft, the home run derby, and of course the game itself providing drama, fun, and entertainment for fans across the globe at about the midway point of the season. But just like the game of baseball itself, the All-Star festivities as well as the All-Star Game have changed over time. Today, let's have a look at how the All-Star Game began, how its significance changed over the years, and just how it became the spectacle that it is today. Let us first talk about the very first All-Star Game. This game took place on July 6th of 1933 in Comiskey Park, Chicago, then home of the Chicago White Sox. This game wasn't organized by the league itself, rather by Arch Ward, a sports writer for the Chicago Tribune, with consent of both the NL and AL presidents at the time, with the NL president going so far as to move games so that certain players from certain teams could attend this event. The All-Stars were chosen by fan vote, which was organized by Arch Ward and 55 other sports writers across the US. The top vote getters were, in the National League, Chuck Klein, a Philadelphia Phillies outfielder with 342,283 votes, and the top vote getter in the AL, and across the entirety of Major League Baseball, was Bucketfoot Al Simmons, an outfielder from the White Sox with 346,291 votes to his name. Other notable participants in this All-Star Game included Lou Gehrig, Babe Ruth, Charlie Gehringer, a Detroit Tigers second baseman, and the two starting pitchers, Lefty Gomez of the New York Yankees for the AL, and Bill Hallahan for the National League. The AL ended up winning this game 4-2, with Babe Ruth hitting the first All-Star Game home run, a two-run shot versus starter Bill Hallahan. Since this inaugural All-Star Game, the All-Star Game itself has taken place nearly every season, with two exceptions, 1945 due to World War II and 2020 due to COVID-19. In that time, the record between the two leagues stands at 48-44 in favor of the American League, with two ties mixed in 1961 and, most recently, 2002. As it stands right now, the 2025 All-Star Game is taking place in Truist Park, home of the Atlanta Braves, and the 2026 game is thus far scheduled to be held at Citizens Bank Park, home of the Philadelphia Phillies. From 1933 through to today, the All-Star Game has undergone many changes and evolutions. For instance, from 1959 to 1962, there were two All-Star Games every season. This was done as a means to increase the money going to the players' pension fund, but it was scrapped after the owners, players, and league agreed to just give the players a larger cut of the game's income. In one of the two 1961 All-Star Games, the first tie happened, a 1-1 tie at Fenway Park in Boston. This game was supposed to go to extra innings, but ended after 9 as rain was pouring down at the time. 1 year after the first tie, in 1962, the All-Star Game MVP award was introduced. In this game in 1962, the National League defeated the AL 3-1 in DC Stadium, home of the Washington Senators. The inaugural MVP, Maury Wills of the Los Angeles Dodgers. Since then, notable All-Star Game MVPs have included Willie Mays, Bobby Bonds, Ken Griffey Jr., Ichiro Suzuki, Mo Rivera, and most recently in 2024, Jarren Duran. Some years later, in 1989, there was the first All-Star Game where a designated hitter was used. And from then until 2009, the DH rule in the All-Star Game was based on whatever league had home field advantage. Meaning if you played at an American League park, you would use a DH. If you played in an NL park, you would not. However, from 2010 onward, there was a DH in every All-Star Game. With one key difference being that in the American League, the fans would be voting for a DH position, whereas in the NL, up until 2022, when the DH became universal, the DH was chosen by whoever was managing the All-Star team. And speaking of players, the All-Star Game roster has also undergone its fair share of changes, namely increasing in size over the years. In 1933, it started with 18 players per league making the All-Star Game. But from 1934 through 1938, that was increased to 20. In 1939, it was increased to 25, which ran all the way through to 1981. In 1982, it was increased to 30. This change of 30 ran up until 2002, and in 2003, the limit was once again increased to 32 players per league. In a one-off year in 2009, the All-Star Game rosters was 33 players per league, and from 2010 all the way through to the present, the roster size was capped at 34. In 2003, we got probably the most significant change in All-Star Game history, namely that from 2003 onward, the winning league in the All-Star Game would be awarded home field advantage in the World Series. To quickly sum up how it got to this change, in the year prior, 2002, the All-Star Game ended in its second ever tie after 11 innings. This left fans, as well as then Commissioner Bud Selig, very unhappy. And so, an agreement was reached to make the All-Star Game mean something, i.e. give home field advantage to the winner from 2003 onward. This agreement lasted through 2016, as this agreement was not renewed in 2017, so home field advantage in the World Series went back to being decided by which one of the participants had the better regular season record. Now, this entire story and how it affected baseball has been covered in much more detail by Stark Raving Sports, so feel free to check out their video if you're interested. 2010 would mark another year where there would be many changes made to the All-Star Game. As I've previously mentioned, in this year, the All-Star Game roster expanded to 34 players per league, and the DH was made universal for every All-Star Game. Additionally, it was agreed that All-Star pitchers who started on the Sunday before the All-Star Game would be replaced on the All-Star Game roster. However, they would still get recognized as All-Stars for this season. Additionally, there was a rule introduced that managers may designate one player for re-entry, meaning if you take that player out of the game, he is allowed to re-enter at a later spot. This is just in case all your bench spots are used or in case of an injury. Keep in mind, this is in addition to a prior established rule allowing the re-entry of a catcher in case the last catcher still on the roster that hadn't played got injured or ejected. Then we got probably the most insignificant change ever in that from 2019 to 2021, the extra innings would start with a ghost runner at second base. Why is it insignificant? Well, because this rule was never used. As in 2019, the AL won 4-3 after 9 regular innings. In 2020, there was no All-Star Game thanks to COVID, and in 2021, the American League again won, this time 5-2 after the regular 9 innings. This then brings us to the last year where there were any significant changes made to the All-Star Game, 2022. Here, it was decided that rather than play on after 9 innings if the game ends in a tie, the All-Star Game was over, or at least the regular All-Star Game would be over. And instead, to break the tie, each manager would select 3 players plus 1 reserve in case of injury, and those 6 players would participate in a home run derby. The rules for this home run derby would be 3 swings per player with alternating rounds with the visiting league starting, meaning if you play at an NL park, the American League goes first and vice versa. If after these 9 swings are taken, both leagues have hit the same amount of home runs, each manager decides on one of their 3 listed players, who then go to sudden death 3 swing rounds. However, if this goes on for more than 1 round, the manager of each league may switch their hitter every round. The official ruling for the game itself would then be as follows. The game itself will be declared a tie, with a notation being made on the game's report for the home run derby result. Additionally, the All-Star Game MVP would be selected from the 9-inning game itself, not the home run derby. Now let's quickly go over some changes that did not include the All-Star Game itself being changed. The Home Run Derby was first introduced in 1985 and has remained a staple of the All-Star Game weekend ever since. The All-Star Futures Game, a chance for the game's best prospect to show what they've got, was introduced in 1999. And the tradition, quote-unquote, of the MLB Draft happening in the same city as the All-Star Game during All-Star Game weekend was introduced in 2021. Meaning that, for example, this year, 2025, the MLB Draft will take place from July 13th to July 14th in Atlanta. And that's it. That is how the All-Star Game and the festivities surrounding it became the event that we know today. Did you know about all of these rule changes, additions, and adjustments, or were there any that maybe surprised you? Let me know in the comments down below, and drop your score prediction for this year's Midsummer Classic. I'm curious to hear what you think. That's all I got for today. Thank you for watching. Please consider liking and subscribing if you enjoyed. It really helped the channel out a lot. And I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.